Merci, merci à tous. Bonjour tout le monde. Donc là, je parle maintenant en français pour juste prévenir que donc le séminaire est traduit est en direct pour choisir la langue. Donc il faut aller dans le menu tout en bas, il y a une petite terre et il faut cliquer dessus et il faut choisir sa langue. So now in English, good morning, everybody. To select the good language for the translation, you should go to the bottom of your screen on the menu and select the language using the icon that's look like a hearse, like a little planet. And you should choose English or French. OK. Donc, on va pouvoir commencer le séminaire et donc donner rapidement la parole à Olga, Olga Alexandrou, qui va nous parler des pélicans au niveau de Prespa et donc de ce qui s'est passé au niveau de la colonie de pélicans suite à la grippe aviaire qu'ils ont subie en 2022. Donc, je laisse la parole à Olga.
Thank you, Anita. Good morning to all. I would like to welcome you all as well at this short webinar organized by Tour du Valat. And first, let me introduce myself very shortly. My name is Olga Alexandrou, and I'm an ornithologist working at the research and conservation sector of the Society for the Protection of Prespa, or SPP as a short. The SPP is an environmental NGO located at the Greek part of the Prespa Lakes. First, I would like to start by thanking Tour du Valat for the invitation and the opportunity to share with you the events, the lessons learned, and the future challenges following the avian flu outbreak of 2022, which had a devastating impact on the Dalmatian pelican colony here at Prespa. The purpose of documenting lessons learned is to share and use knowledge derived from experience in order to promote desirable outcomes in the future when similar events may occur, and at the same time to preclude undesirable outcomes. Although these lessons learned that we documented derive from our experience in Greece, we believe that at least some of them are relevant at an international level as well. So let me start with a few words about Prespa's importance for water birds. You see a list of important and rare water birds that inhabit the Prespa lakes. Two lakes, Lesser Prespa Lake and Great Prespa Lake. They are home to substantial populations of many rare and threatened water bird species. A remarkable biodiversity lies within a relatively small area, and this area has a very particular feature. It's a transboundary area shared by three countries, Greece, Albania, and North Macedonia. The Society for the Protection of Prespa has dedicated much of its work during 4 decades in research and conservation, much of this work aiming at pelicans. It has implemented a series of direct and indirect conservation measures, and these measures have contributed greatly to the increase of the population, to an average of 1,300 breeding pairs in recent years, from 100 to 200 breeding pairs in the early 80s, as you see in the graph. So this is the nesting islets in Lesser Prespa Lake, where two pelican species nest, the Dalmatian pelican, holds the largest colony on Earth, at least used to hold until very recently. About 20% of world population used to nest in this lake, whereas the great white pelican also holds a very large population of around 700 pairs. And this is the second largest colony in Europe after the Danube Delta. So you see the Dalmatian pelican. A few words about this species. It's a short migrant species that nests at several colonies in southeastern Europe and winters in northeastern Greece and western Turkey. Whereas the great white pelican is a true migrant species, a long migrant species, that winters in the sub-Saharan Africa. Both species nest side by side on the same nesting islets. So in the beginning of the breeding season of 2022 at the Prespa colony, we started recording mass deaths of Dalmatian pelicans. You see here a photo of this large nesting islet on the right and other nesting islets full of Dalmatian pelican carcasses. All dead Dalmatian pelicans were adult birds in breeding plumage, and the carcasses were located on the nesting islets or close by in the water. The veterinarian authorities took several samples, and the laboratory results indicated the highly pathogenic avian influenza H5N1. In this graph, you see the outline of the development of the avian flu outbreak at Prespa, as documented by the Society for the Protection of Prespa. The first Dalmatian pelicans arrived at Prespa on February the 9th, and the first mass mortality event was recorded only a week later with 11 dead Dalmatian pelicans. After that, the number, as you see on the graph, increased dramatically. On February 25th, we did a thorough screening with a drone of the whole colony, and we documented around 200 carcasses. And in the next 2 weeks, the increase was immense, almost 200% increase in the first week, and another close to 100% increase in the second. Ultimately reaching 1,000 dead Dalmatian pelicans on March 9th. In the following weeks, as you see in the graph, the mortality rate slowed down, finally leading to a total of 1,734 Dalmatian pelican deaths by the end of April, when it virtually ceased. This number corresponds to circa 60% of Prespa's breeding population that was lost. This is a map with a global distribution of the 2022 wave of avian influenza for wild birds only. As you can see from the numbers, Europe was the epicenter, unlike former outbreaks that were mostly in Asia. At least 63 wild bird species were infected. At least 50 million poultry were culled, and the geographical extent was unprecedented, from the Svalbard Islands to the north to South Portugal and Ukraine to the east. And the losses were also unprecedented and very worrisome, such as the circa 4,000 barnacle geese in Scotland, the 8,000 cranes in Israel, and many thousands of gannets, terns, and other seabirds in Northern Europe. almost 2,500 Dalmatian pelicans died in southeastern Europe. This is 40% of the southeastern European breeding population. These are the numbers per country. The H5N1 strain of avian influenza was confirmed at the Albanian and Montenegrin colonies, and 3 of the Romanian colonies, apart from Greece. No incidences were recorded in the Bulgarian and Turkish colonies. And these numbers are 10% of the global Dalmatian pelican population that was lost. This is a map with distribution of the Dalmatian pelican in the world. Just to say that its populations fall within 3 flyways: the Black Sea Mediterranean flyway, where the infections occurred in Southeastern Europe, the Central Asia flyway, and the East Asia flyway, a small population there. This is a map with the geographic range of Dalmatian pelican mortality in Greece. The development of the outbreak in Greece is linked with the movement of pelicans during the breeding period. I should say that Dalmatian pelicans nesting at Prespa, which you see here in northeastern Greece, move for the first months of the breeding periods to other lowland wetlands, as the Prespa lakes lie in high altitude, 850 meters above sea level. So fish, their diet consists of fish solely, are not available to them in these first months of the breeding period, as the waters are still too cold. So they have to move from January, February, when they arrive at Prespa, until May, to other wetlands, lowland wetlands, in order to feed. So the first deaths occurred in the Prespa lakes, and then we started recording through our networks deaths in other wetlands across Greece. The outline of the circles is the 4 Dalmatian pelican colonies of the eastern subpopulation in Greece. By March 13, all these colonies had been affected. In total, 13 wetlands where Dalmatian pelican deaths were recorded, but the major die-offs occurred at the high altitude colonies, Prespa and an adjacent colony called Himaditida, whereas the mortality was limited at lowland warmer wetlands. This is a map from a paper published in 2018, where we have analyzed the GPS data from transmitters that we have deployed on Dalmatian pelicans. And you see the interlake flights during spring with a green line. And so this is just to show the obvious connection with the outbreak development that started from Western Greece, and then other wetlands in central and eastern Greece were also affected. No other species appear to be severely affected. We recorded no great white pelican mortality at Prespa. Remember, the 2 species nest side by side. Very few great white pelicans were found dead elsewhere in Greece. A few other species were recorded. This is just a photo showing Dalmatian pelican carcasses on nesting islets, where at the same time great cormorants were nesting side by side, and they were not affected at all. Another photo of great white pelicans nesting on the same islets. And this is the large nesting islet after the first carcass removal operations. Empty, it looks completely empty in March, where this is how it should be in normal years. What we did during the outbreak. So as soon as we recorded the first deaths, we started very intensive monitoring of the Prespa colony, and also a smaller adjacent colony that the SPP has been monitoring since its establishment in 2017. We immediately notified and mobilized the state authorities, the vet authorities, and local and regional authorities. We notified our partners in the transboundary Prespa, and we started operational planning and planning of the collection of the carcasses. At national level, we notified the national authorities, the Ministry of Environment, the management bodies of other pelican sites, and we took the role of documenting the mortality events throughout Greece using our networks and the volunteers of the Hellenic Ornithological Society throughout Greece that shared all mortality events with the SPP. At the same time, we provided informative material to national collaborators. And at international level, the SPP was the sole source of news for Prespa and Greece. We warned and announced the deaths, the mortality events through our networks. We exchanged info. We inquired for signs in other countries of mortality, and we contributed to reports at international level. Throughout this crisis, we were in constant consultations with experts, a group of experts that the SPP had formed in 2018, and that proved to be very, very important to solve issues. At the same time, we provided regular updates through our networks and media. The carcass removal operation was a multifaceted one. We had to face various challenges like the huge number of carcasses, the high virulence of the virus, the risk of exposure to humans, difficult access. Of course, it was an unprecedented situation, and it was both metaphorically and literally an unknown territory for authorities. Metaphorically, of course, because it was an unprecedented situation, but also literally an unknown territory, because apart from researchers, only a handful of fishermen are familiar with this relatively inaccessible area where the carcasses were located. So a lot of issues had to be resolved, operational, coordination, and also disturbance issues, because remember, at the same time, many different water birds in large populations were continuing nesting. So the SPP had to lead all the way, had to basically organize much of the operation. A lot of players, of course, were involved. The Ministry of Environment that issued the permits, the regional authorities that contracted a specialized contractor that received the carcasses and transported them to a regional incinerator. Notably, the carcass collection was done by 2 local fishermen. Of course, the municipality of Prespa, the Prespa National Park Management Body, and the vet authorities all were involved. And finally, 1,422 Dalmatian pelican carcasses were collected. This is 80%, 82% of the carcasses. This is an operational map to show you in circles the colonies and the roost locations where hundreds of carcasses were located. The red lines are the selected routes for the boats of the fishermen that did the dirty job collecting the carcasses. You see on the top the small pond. This is a nesting location too. That is completely inaccessible. It's very shallow, so this is where the SPP amphibian machinery had to cut vegetation and dig a channel to make an entrance so that boats could enter. In total, 7 collection days were needed, and also there was a need for repetition because as soon as the first carcasses in March were collected, the Dalmatian pelicans arriving kept dying. So collection of carcasses had to be repeated in April as well. And a total of almost 15 tons of carcasses was removed from the wetland. Here are some photos of the operations. You see here the large nesting islet that I showed you again before, the 2 boats collecting the carcasses, putting them in special boxes, and they were transported to the incinerator. This is a photo of our amphibian machinery that had to dig the channel for this shallow pond where the nesting sites were located so that the boats could enter to remove the carcasses. And in this drone photo, you see the channel dug by this amphibian machinery. The 2 fishermen working on the nesting islets, at the same time, great white pelicans that were nesting in the same nesting islets were, of course, disturbed. We tried to keep disturbance at a minimum, so some carcasses were not collected to leave birds as undisturbed as possible. So, after presenting the events, I would like to talk to you shortly about the troubling questions arising from these events. So firstly, were Dalmatian pelicans already infected when they arrived at Prespa, or did they get infected here? Well, no cases were reported from their wintering grounds. If you remember, Dalmatian pelicans winter in northeastern Greece and western Turkey, so no cases were reported in these wetlands or in wetlands that they use, staging wetlands that they use during migration. So the infections in other Greek wetlands only occurred at a later time, after Prespa infections. So we make the hypothesis that Dalmatian pelicans were probably infected when they arrived at Prespa. And the possible source could be wintering waterbirds. And this hypothesis is supported by the fact that in 2022, we recorded at Lesser Prespa Lake during wintering counts 3 times more wintering waterbirds than average numbers of previous years. The second troubling question is, why were Dalmatian pelicans so vulnerable when the other species were not affected, not even their close relatives, the great white pelicans? So several factors have certainly played a role, like the large aggregations of nesting birds. Remember, thousands of birds nest at Prespa. The early start of the breeding cycle, Dalmatian pelicans start breeding in late January, early February, so it's still very, very cold here at Prespa. The persistent low temperatures, which make an ideal environment for this virus, for the avian influenza virus. And maybe other factors have also played a role, like genetics or other unknown factors. So this rises as a priority research topic clearly, the vulnerability of Dalmatian pelicans. Another troubling question is whether there will be recurrent outbreaks. So according to experts, highly pathogenic avian influenza is viewed as no longer as a poultry disease, but as an emerging threat to wildlife worldwide. And the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control, in its reports throughout 2022, is talking about higher virulence of the virus and the highly pathogenic avian influenza season in Europe. And it's noting that the observed change in the proportions of affected wild bird species from waterfowl to other species suggests a shift of infection from winter migrants to birds that are resident or breeding in Europe. And it's important for authorities to carefully document the number of wild birds, to assess the ecological impact and come up with policy decisions to avert outbreaks, not only in poultry anymore and humans, but also in wild birds. So in the final stages of the breeding season in Prespa in 2022, we had some renesting attempts and several failures, but 190 pairs managed to successfully nest. As you see in the graph, this is the lowest number since the early 80s. Fortunately, in 2023, the numbers started rising again. And of course, as some of you may have already know, we didn't have a recurrent outbreak, at least not in Greece. So future challenges. Firstly, it will take decades for the population recovery, of course, if no other incidents occur. Focused genetic research is needed to understand this very high vulnerability of Dalmatian pelicans. Samples from all colonies need to be taken for a minimum from the southeastern flyway. Research to better understand the avian flu transmission mechanisms is also needed. We need to ensure good monitoring of all pelican colonies and to capitalize on the knowledge from all these years, the experience and the networks with researchers, universities, and NGOs. In late 2022, after the breeding period finished, at the late stages, we started research in collaboration with Professor Ursula Hefle from the University of Castilla-La Mancha in Spain. Professor Ursula Hefle is a researcher that the SPP has been consulting for some years now for infectious diseases that can cause mass mortality in water birds. And we started in July 2022, and we continued throughout 2023 from sampling all Greek pelican colonies. The objective of this study is to shed light on the factors implicated in the serious impact of H5N1 on Dalmatian pelicans at Prespa, so as to enable the better risk management for the species. So let's move now to lessons learned out of this experience. First, in regard to scientific research. First of all, monitoring the genetic sequence of avian influenza viruses is necessary for basic biological research. And according to experts, this basic research, along with surveillance, are the main tools that need to be developed worldwide. Secondly, research has to be encouraged by international and national research institutions. This is essential in order to understand and address avian influenza. At the same time, we need to have a bigger involvement of national researchers, along with the establishment of properly equipped multiple laboratories in the country. This will create the conditions for real-time monitoring of the phenomenon, as processing and analysis of biological materials must be done within a short period of time, as after a certain period, this becomes futile. In regard to annual monitoring of water bird populations and habitats, The systematic scientific monitoring of breeding, feeding, and resting sites of waterbirds is a requirement prior to organizing any operational planning at these sites. It is worth noting that within this exact framework, the Society for the Protection of Prespa has been preparing a national report on pelicans since 2015. In implementation of its collaboration agreement with 12 management bodies of pelican sites in Greece. This is an annual national report that includes primarily the analysis of annual breeding data of both pelican species in all Greek colonies, and also has many other important events related to pelicans, and a list of dead and injured birds recorded across the country. This data from these annual reports were particularly useful for assessing the status of the population after the 2022 destruction. Also, there is an urgent need to ensure regular patrols in wetlands, especially during the breeding season. Regular patrols are a necessity for the timely detection of any suspicious incidents and for the immediate notification of the vet authorities. And it is important to keep a mortality logbook in each area that includes species identification, date, location, and relevant photos if possible. This is very important as a detailed archive aids in the assessment and also in research. And it's imperative also in order to give accurate information for national and international agencies. Going to the lessons learned from sampling dead, sick, healthy birds. What we learned is that the limited official responsibilities of the veterinary authorities with regard to wildlife creates problems in managing a large-scale disaster such as that of 2022. Within the current institutional framework, at least in Greece, during an epidemic affecting wildlife, the responsiveness of veterinary authorities is basically associated only with public health and economic activities, such as poultry farming. In the face of an emerging significant threat to wildlife on a global level, there should be greater involvement of the vet authorities. This is clear. Also, there is an urgent need to ensure that sampling is carried out on a larger scale. Only 2-3 samples were taken from dead birds at Prespa. A few more carcasses were collected and sent to the vet authorities. This very small number of samples confirms the presence of the disease and also aids the veterinary authorities to implement biosecurity measures in poultry farms. However, this very small number of samples does not contribute sufficiently to research and to the better understanding of the disease in wildlife. So in the context of avian influenza surveillance, authorities in some countries, we know that they take samples even from seemingly healthy birds, either through targeted trapping of wild birds or as part of research initiatives. This is something that did not happen in Greece, and we know now that it would be very, very helpful. In regard to the management of large numbers of sick wild birds, there is no management plan for diseased or dying wild birds found in nature, especially in large numbers. So the question is, should they be removed or euthanized? We know that in countries like Israel, where access to sick birds was immediate and easy, appropriate measures were indeed taken to prevent the spread of disease, and sick birds were euthanized by veterinarians. In other countries, though, dying birds were left to die and then collected. There is no clear directive from international organizations regarding this issue, how to manage dying birds, and this lack of guidance may potentially lead to further disease dispersal. So this is something that we all need to know. In regard to the collection and management of large numbers of dead wild birds, well, it is crucial to intervene as quickly as possible to remove carcasses. According to current knowledge, this is the only measure for limiting the spread of the disease and thus for protecting wildlife and ecosystems. However, the collection and management of dead birds in our country at least faces some issues that need to be resolved. First of all, the legal framework regarding the authorities' responsibilities and the procedures that they should follow is very much unclear. The collection of samples from colonies in wetlands by untrained personnel, the management of infected samples and the handling of large-scale viral loads were issues that were only resolved here at Prespa thanks to the great efforts and the positive attitude of all Prespa stakeholders. It is imperative for the future to reevaluate and define who does what, making everything clearer. So right now, responsibilities are not clear. It is necessary, of course, to forecast how related costs should be covered: the collection, the transportation, the incineration. Also, the timely obtainment of necessary permits from the relevant authorities is essential. Remember that carcasses at Prespa were located on the nesting colonies, so within a strictly protected zone. So special permits needed to be taken. These permits should include measures for the protection of other species, measures for the collection of dead birds, and also complementary measures for the biosecurity of the team. What's also very important is the existence of site-specific operational plan. As each site has its own particularities, and it would be beneficial to use local stakeholders' knowledge, experience, and resources in order to organize a local plan for the immediate intervention and handling of similar incidents. I would like to mention here that SPP had an existing plan that was prepared a few years prior to the outbreak, and this was created as part of a LIFE project. This plan for coordinated action, together with the long-established communications at Prespa with all local stakeholders, had helped to familiarize all stakeholders with wetland issues and also the possibility of such an event as a hypothetical scenario had already been discussed. So in the case of Prespa, both knowledge and resources were available for the immediate collection of dead birds. However, this is not the case for other areas. Therefore, it would be beneficial to engage in local planning prior to the occurrence of any such event. What's also very important is the activation of local stakeholders in addition to the competent state authorities. This is necessary for a fast and successful response to such incidences, especially of such a large scale. However, when stakeholders are to be involved, it is essential to provide prior training and information, as avian influenza virus is potentially dangerous to humans. And during an outbreak, panic and misinformation may arise, making pre-existing awareness very crucial. This is a lesson we learned from this experience. In regard to information and networking, we learned that the team of scientists, that the experts that the SPP already had in place provided. Sorry, I lost my mouse. Provided anyway. I will use the yes. So the team of experts that the SPP had in place was crucial for decision making during the crisis, both at local and regional transboundary level. The established networks also that the SPP had in place proved to be very effective in exchanging information and expertise. The guidance that we had through these networks, especially in the early stages of the crisis, were invaluable. The open line of communication between local stakeholders and the SPP was crucial for the progress of the works. Also, what we learned is that the continuous updating of international organizations significantly contributed to accurately documenting the phenomenon and assessing the situation at an international level. In regards to communication, the mass mortality events communication, which was also foreseen in this plan for coordinated action that I mentioned before, that the SPP had prepared, proved to be very important for countering misinformation and preventing panic and a sense of insecurity amongst the local population. Furthermore, it was demonstrated that an informed local community can act as an ally in the efforts to document such incidents. Regarding the dissemination of information to the wider public, the main lesson learned is that the coordinated and careful voice of the different local stakeholders in the media was very crucial, as it helped to avoid over-dramatization of the situation and also to protect wild birds from further disturbance. Finally, the primary lesson learned that we need to keep is that proactive planning is needed. Anticipating and preparing for future crises is a must-have. This is a photo of the material proactively prepared by the Society for the Protection of Prespa in 2018 in the context of life project Prespa Waterbirds that I talked to you before. And I would like to highlight here that in this ornithological expert panel that was formed to guide and review and comment on the drafts of this work, Dr. Marion Wittkok from Tour du Valat had also had a role in this, was part of this ornithological expert panel, and this panel contributed greatly to the outcome of this plan. That's it from me. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm at your disposal for any questions that you might have, if I can answer them. Thank you.
Alors, je vois des mains levées. Le mieux est de poser la question par écrit pour qu'elle puisse être traduite. Olga, I will let somebody the microphone open of somebody. You can tell me if you can hear him, and then
Okay.
It's the same for Anita?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. You can speak maybe louder.
Hello, Andre. I can hear you too.
Okay, this was my setting that was wrong. Sorry for being late at this presentation. Thanks for presenting everything and making some new insights of the situation. Sorry if I interrupt with your current research, but I wanted to ask if somebody made a chronology of the outbreaks in 2022. The chronology of outbreaks in different parts of the area.
Yes, we did. Is that your question, Andre? Should I answer?
Yes.
Yep. Yes, we did. I shortly presented the map of the development of the outbreak in Greece. We certainly have the timeline, but I didn't present it in detail. But yes, we have the detailed timeline of the outbreak, how it occurred throughout wetlands in Greece.
How about the wetlands in the surrounding countries?
Yes, we have records, dates from all the information that you and our Romanian colleagues, our Albanian colleagues, we have gathered all this information. So we have the detailed timeline from all the information gathered from you.
Okay. It's just that I wanted to ask, since there is no as far as I know, exact connection of the chronology between different colonies. So the working theory is that actually some other species, like reservoir species, was responsible for promoting the virus in different colonies.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any idea what species could that be?
We have not a clear idea, but as said, a major hypothesis is that pelicans were infected through wintering waterbirds, and this is a scenario that we did for Greece, for Prespa, as we know that they were firstly infected at Prespa, and then the virus spread to other wetlands and colonies in Greece. The same thing may have happened in other colonies in southeastern Europe. We don't know much more about this, though. This is just a hypothesis.
Okay, so now another question from Patrick. Patrick, maybe I give you the. Patrick?
Can you hear me?
Me, I can hear you, Patrick. Hello.
Okay. Hello, Olga. Nice to see you.
Nice to hear you.
Well, first of all, I let a comment in the answers and question and answers panel, but also I wanted to ask you if you had a chance to collect rings information and to make some population analysis of the survival or the death of the animals, the age, for instance.
You mean during the outbreak in 2022?
Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't have a chance to clearly look at the carcasses. As I said before, the collection was done by 2 local fishermen that had to collect 1,500 carcasses. From what we know from them, we did ask them if they noticed any rings. They said they didn't, but we cannot be on the safe side, of course, as all this happened with a lot very quickly, and that was a very difficult job for them to carry out. So there is a possibility, of course, that some birds were ringed and they were not observed. But from what we heard from them, no ringed birds were collected.
Thank you. I guessed so. As you explained how was the procedure for removing the carcasses, I suspected it was not possible to correct the ring information. Maybe I have a chance for a second question.
Yes, let's go, Patrick.
Thanks. Maybe I misunderstood something, but it seems I found a discrepancy between the number of dead birds, the proportion of dead birds, and the number of the reduction of the number of breeding pairs. Is that correct? That is 60% of the birds were dead, but the number of breeding pairs was divided by 7.
Yeah. You're referring to the 190 pairs, 200 pairs that ultimately nested in 2022, right?
Right.
Yes. Well, this is correct, so this is a very small number. After losing, we would expect a greater number in 2022. After losing 60% of the population, you would expect this 40%. This accounts for some hundreds of birds, but you have to keep in mind that this outbreak that did not cause only deaths. It caused also a lot of birds that were probably sick, infected, and finally survived. So some of them probably did not breed at all. And also it caused a major disturbance, not only from the collection of carcasses, but also the whole the whole sense in the air was disturbing. Pelicans died for months in mass. So clearly this was not a normal year, and clearly we would not expect that this 40% left would breed in that year. And remember, it lasted until late April. So the birds that finally nested in late April, early May. So this is already quite late for Dalmatian pelicans. So this would explain why so small numbers. Whereas in 2023, I think we found out the potential of the population, as last year we had around 500, 600 nests of Dalmatian pelicans. So this would be a normal year, I would say, 2023.
Yes, and then the numbers are more consistent, more coherent.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. It was a very nice, interesting talk.
Thank you, Patrick.
Ok, j'ai une question sur le chat de Thierry Boulinier, CEF CNRS Montpellier, qui est en anglais. Thank you for your very nice presentation, all the work done. I have a small question. Do you know if some individuals were infected but survived? In what proportion? Could it be possible to infer from blood sampling of a sample of birds and detecting specific antibodies?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for your question, Thierry. Unfortunately, this is something that we do not know. We can only make hypotheses that some individuals were indeed infected, but they survived. Unfortunately, we were not allowed, nor us, nor any, not the vet authorities, they did not take any samples. This is what I said in the lessons learned, that the only samples taken, these very few samples, were only to detect the virus. And after that, no sampling was done to detect antibodies. No sampling was done for any kind of research. So unfortunately, we lost a very great opportunity to sample dead birds at that point, and alive birds to learn more about the disease and its spread and its how it affected the population and also the surviving pelicans. Unfortunately, no.
Ok, je vais donner la parole à Marion, je pense, ou à la salle, si on les entend bien. Oui.
Oui, Jocelyn Champagnon, researcher at Tour du Valat. Hi, Olga. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very nice. I had a question about the removal of the carcasses, because you presented the case that you could have take the choice to not to remove them. For example, in some species, for some other places, it happened. And so there is some cost and benefits for that, and I would like to have your feedback on this experience, because the cost, as you said, you can put a failure on the colonies for other species, but also for the same species. And also there is some risks for humans. So I would like to have your point of view on the benefits, if you could have an evaluation of the benefits in terms of mortality. Do you think removing the carcasses allowed to control the amount of died Dalmatian pelicans?
Is this Champagnon? I'm sorry, there was some noise, and I'm not sure I heard your question very good. So if I heard you well. Yeah. Okay. So yes, definitely, this is what all experts advised and guide us towards. This is the only known measure for limiting the spread of the disease. So this is the only measure for protecting the surviving birds, both pelicans and other birds. So this was clear from the beginning that it was the most important measure to limit the spread. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Bonjour Olga, merci pour une présentation très intéressante. Christian Perelli, donc de la Tour du Valat. Donc j'avais deux questions en fait. Tu as dit que la source la plus probable de contamination initiale, c'était les oiseaux d'eau hivernants, donc j'imagine surtout des grands nombres de canards et d'oies. Est-ce qu'on sait si ensuite ces oiseaux, quand ils sont repartis au moment de la mortalité massive des pélicans,
on a trouvé une mortalité de ces canards et de ces oies sur leur voie de migration vers le nord ou sur leur zone de reproduction. Ça, c'est ma première question. La deuxième, c'était est-ce que la source, enfin la souche de virus qui a touché ces pélicans, elle dérive initialement d'une souche qui a causé des épidémies il y a quelques années et qui elle-même venait d'élevage de volailles, ou alors c'est quelque chose de totalement nouveau qui a évolué seulement au sein des espèces sauvages. Merci d'avance.
Okay, thank you. Well, about the first question, no records of infected geese or ducks were recorded in Greece. So no, this wintering water birds, this wintering at Prespa, we do not have any records that they were infected and dying. So very few records of some duck species in other wetlands in Greece. Yeah, it seems that they were not affected. In regard to your second question, yes, the H5N1 strain is the one circulating for a few years now, according to what I know. Marion may be able to say more about this, as she's a specialist in wildlife diseases. But indeed, this is the strain that occurred also back in 2015, and this is the strain that infected Dalmatian pelicans for the first time in 2015, when they were first recorded dying in the Danube Delta. And this is what caused us the alarm, and we started taking these proactive measures and organizing and proactively planning for in the case that such an event should emerge here in the largest colony on Earth.
Merci beaucoup, Olga. Muriel, si tu me laisses le temps, je peux compléter ce que vient de dire Olga. En effet, H5N1, c'est un groupe qui a été présent chez les oiseaux sauvages depuis longtemps et qui est présent depuis plusieurs années. En revanche, il me semble, si j'ai bien compris Olga, que vous n'avez pas de données spécifiques sur la souche qui a circulé chez les pélicans. Et donc, c'est difficile de dire si ce H5N1 particulier est uniquement sur la faune sauvage en ce moment, voire spécialisé sur seulement certaines espèces de faune sauvage, ou si c'est une souche qui circule aussi chez la volaille. Il me semble qu'on n'a pas encore les données pour la circulation chez les pélicans assez spécifiques pour dire si c'est une souche particulière à la faune sauvage parmi les H5N1 ou si c'est une souche qui est partagée avec la volaille. Mais peut-être que maintenant vous avez plus d'informations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Marion. Indeed, it's so little the information we have, and this is why research is needed at many different levels.
Ok, je pense que voilà, il n'y a pas d'autres questions du côté du chat et voilà, pas d'autres mains levées. Marion, ouais, rapidement pour pouvoir libérer Anita, vas-y.
Yes, sorry, just a quick question. Jean Gembert speaking. So, hi, Olga. Thanks for your great talk. Just one quick question about your lessons learned and recommendation. One of them was to development for science, the collaboration between veterinary authorities and the wildlife management. Have you seen any progress in this respect in the last year after this outbreak in Prespa?
Again, there is some noise, but I think I heard you saying to whether there has been some progress in regard to veterinary authorities' responsibilities and taking more action in 2023 after the 2022 outbreak, if they have moved toward a better legal framework. Is this what you asked? Anita, can you please confirm?
Oui, bien ça.
Okay, so I think this is what you said. So no, we don't have something clear. Of course, fortunately there were no incidences in 2023, but things are moving very slowly, and in regard to putting these changes on a legal basis, no, we have not seen any progress. Certainly, authorities have been alarmed. The Minister of Environment has been alarmed, but we do not have a clear view of whether some changes have taken place already. But there are discussions being made up to there. I hope I have answered your question, because I'm not very sure
Yes,
that
thank
I
you
heard
very
you.
much.
Okay.
Donc, merci beaucoup, Olga. Nous devons mettre fin au séminaire maintenant, au webinaire. Un grand merci. Marion, tu veux ajouter quelque chose?
No, thank you very much, Olga, and thank you for the listeners.
Merci et merci, Anita. Bonne journée à tous.
Thank you very much. Goodbye to everyone.
Goodbye.